Hello, my lovelies. GinnyZero here, the author with no last name, and welcome to another Thursday extra video. I have been receiving a few asks on my Tumblr lately, and which is great. Thank you for the asks, and I wanted to make some videos based on the asks, and I didn't want you guys to have to wait until the middle of September to, to hear my answers. It's not always that I have a 5-part video in the works. So we're going to have some fun videos on Thursday just with Authortube stuff like that. And today I wanted to continue to address what the DWF24-3-NZ was asking me over on Tumblr, where they seem to have a lot of process questions, and they're kind of curious about my opinions on process. So let's talk about that. For those of you who might be unaware, I started out in high school writing fan fiction. I did start, with original fiction with my best friend, and then realized I knew nothing about writing. So I decided, I was going to experiment with writing using fan fiction. So, I did not take formal writing courses, like, whatever creative stuff writing you had in high school, that's what I had. And then I also was, so I was basically writing online and posting online and getting feedback right away. The other thing was, what I was doing was reading a lot. I literally cannot remember everything that I've read. Like, the other day, I got a book out from the library, and I was reading it, going, this seems really familiar. I mean, it was like published in 1987 or something like that, and I had seen it on a recommended list. I was like, it felt really familiar. And I got to the end, I said, oh, I remember this book. Oh, because the ending was very, very distinct. It's like, oh, I remember this book. So I was like, yeah, I remember this book, and I'm not liking it that much. Okay, well, okay then. Well, I've read it again, completely by accident. But, like, so I was reading a lot, and I was trying to take what I read. I wasn't really trying to take what I read and apply it to the screen, but kind of like osmosis. The more you read, the more, you learn about structure and pacing and stuff kind of automatically. And I was like really experimenting with my writing style and what the types of things I like to write, which, by the way, I called myself like a romantic comedy writer when I was in fan fiction, but like romantic comedy and action and found family type drama, that's the stuff I like to write. And that's where I was learning it and how to do it in fan fiction, one little step at a time type of thing. And I mean, your writing learning process, everybody's going to be different. So, just so you know, I don't have an English degree. I had a narrative documentary class in my college that was basically write a story. Narrative documentary was to write the story. And then we had a persuasive pitch paper class, which was next to useless. But, so everything I've learned and everything that I do when I'm writing is basically something I've either, picked up to experience or gotten out of this little book here. Writer's Little Book of Wisdom. My dad bought this for me when I was in high school, and I think this book has traveled as much as I have. Several thousand miles. It's gone with me to San Francisco, it's gone with me to Daytona Beach, it went with me to Ohio, and so everything that I know about writing is just something that I have learned over time. And I have not taken writer's classes. I have not taken these master classes or writing courses, or, you know. And I know in one of my older videos I say, you know, I don't advocate for you taking them. So I will, and I need to expound on that because that video was kind of, it was very, very specific to something I was doing for NaNoWriMo, and I was thinking I was going to go back and expound on it, but I didn't. So there's a lot of writing advice and a lot of guidelines and a lot of author master classes out there, whether they're done by Stephen King, Brandon Sanderson, the lady who wrote The Handmaid's Tale has one. A lot of big authors have these writing master classes or these lists of, you know, 10 pieces of advice. They have books. They have, they'll use Save the Cat. You know, they'll tell you about plot structure and blah, 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 okay? And a lot of this advice is very good advice. But it's been truncated down so much that it becomes useless because it's not telling you at what stage of your writing journey that this advice is applicable to. Take show, don't tell. A lot of times, show, don't tell is given as advice because you have a lot of people who will just blurt out a whole bunch of exposition on the page. They'll summarize characters doing things, you know, they'll tell you what they're feeling, whatever, and then they won't show you. They won't show you what they're feeling. They won't show you how they came to this information. They won't have characters interacting with each other. Or, you know, let's take the ubiquitous diner scene. Two characters come together at a diner, and they're talking. And like a lot of normal people, they're talking about other people. They're gossiping about other people. Now, as a reader, I don't care about these other people. I don't know these other people. It would be a lot more useful for me as a reader for you to skip the diner scene and go have the characters interact with these other people so we find out who they are, why they're important, and, you know, are they going to come up again in the story? Are these active players in the story? Otherwise, the diner scene just needs to go. It's boring. Nobody cares. Nobody cares, you know, so-and-so is getting divorced, the dog's sick, whatever. That type of scene is a telling scene instead of showing us that, you know, we go to visit those characters and we catch them in the middle of the fight, the dog is whining in the corner and or whatever. You know, that would be showing us a story. And that is something that gets told a lot to young writers or to early writers because they get focused on the diner scene because they want to get that exposition out of the way instead of going, oh, I could show this in a plot relevant way. So just things like that. Writing every day. That's something that gets told a lot. Use paper and pen, I guess, gets also told a lot. Do this, do that. So all this writing guidelines, all this writing stuff, advice gets into your head and you're like, oh my god, what's right, what's wrong? What am I supposed to be doing? I don't know, help! You know, so first off, take a step back, breathe. Not every single piece of advice is going to resonate with you right that minute. And it might not even apply to you. You know, there's a whole section in this Writer's Little Book of Reason about coffee. Finding your optimum caffeine level. I don't drink coffee. I think it's funny. You know, add too much sugar on the peril of writing romances. I think that's funny. But I don't drink coffee. So the optimum caffeine level is not something that I really care about. You know, but, you know, not every piece of guidelines are going to help. Which is why when I'm doing these type of guidelines, I do try to put out, when I'm saying advice, whatever, this is helpful for early writers. This is helpful for when you're doing your second draft. This might be something a more advanced writer needs to think about. But most of the time, I try to gear my advice towards younger writers, to early writers, because those are the type of people who are off looking for advice. So, so these authors who are doing the master classes, who have put out books of writing advice, who are doing, videos and stuff, okay, they are doing this to make money. I'm not trying to make money off of writing advice. None of my videos are monetized, and every single writing advice pamphlet I've got is free. Because I'm not arrogant enough to think that, the way I do my writing and my process is going to work for you. I want you to find your own process and find the pieces of writing advice that work for you, no matter how they're stated. So, when these authors, and I've seen a lot of them, I've seen them on Tumblr, I've seen them as traditional authors, I mean, script writers do this. What they are trying to sell is the formula that works for them. Okay? And you think, as a young writer, that these people, these authors, they have books published. They're working on scripts for television or movies. They are successful. Obviously, something in their writing process has this formula to be successful. Which ignores context and nuance, as always. Because, say Stephen King. There was a lot more publishers 50, 60 years ago when Stephen King was coming up who were willing to take a chance on his weird and crazy books that, big publishers like HarperCollins and Penguin Random House and stuff wouldn't take a chance on at the time. And now, he's such a big name because those niche horror thriller type books through the smaller publishing houses became successful. He has a huge following of people who read him. Following of followers, what a weird thing. He has a huge platform of readers that he made over years by selling books. Not through social media, not through his writing, not through his writing advice book, even though he has one that he published years ago. Not through his, not through any type of master class, but the books he published, because there were so many different publishing houses back then. If one told him no, he had 20 other options, not, 4. So Stephen King writes the first draft with pen and paper. He sits down and he writes every day. Well, good for him. George R.R. Martin cannot write without being inspired. He does not use pen and paper, far as I know, and his process is, he's a character writer, so he likes to plant the seeds of characters and conflicts between characters and write it out and see how it goes. And if he knows the ending, he doesn't have the motivation to write anymore, which is a real problem when he's still got 2 books on contract for his major series. So they're selling you what worked for them. Okay? It's like an athlete. Okay? So you've got a footballer. Whichever footballer you care about, soccer or American. And they are selling this protein thing with an exercise program. Okay, so they're doing this very specific type of exercise program that said they'll tell you, we'll give you rock hard abs and take this protein and make a shake with it and you'll build muscle. What they don't tell you is that they naturally build muscle easily in that way. When they lift weights, they build muscle. When they do push sit-ups or whatever, they build the muscle. And they're naturally built to do muscle that way. That's why they're a footballer. That way, their tried and true method of cardio may not work for you. Because your body doesn't have the same metabolism, and it doesn't build muscle in the exact same way their body builds muscle and their metabolism works. I mean, there's a reason why most action stars have the same type of body. Okay? It's because, you know, they go and they talk to the same trainers and same fitness people, and the trainers and fitness people look that, you know, they basically choose the same type of bodybuilders, the same type of people that can make the same type of bodies to play the action stars. So, you know, you're going to have those kind of broad-shouldered, narrow hips type of people versus, you know, somebody like a swimmer or a basketball player who are really tall and they have very lithe muscle and they might not have broad shoulders type of thing. But what they are selling you is what works for them. So what Stephen King is selling you, what Brandon Sanderson is selling you, what the lady who wrote The Handmaid's Tale is telling you is what works for them, what works their writing process. And that writing process most likely is not going to work for you. But hey, they got your money, and that's all they care about. You know, you could try to do the writing process, and maybe you can find parts of it that work for you, but it's going to be one of those, this is really stressful, like, you know, it could put those brakes on to your writing really, really fast if you're trying to plot every single chapter out, or do a three-part arc or whatever, that they're telling you, you know, this is what you have to do. That doesn't work for you. Then that doesn't work for you. You know, toss it out and go find something, you know, that works for you. Or do, you know, write, like write one book, write the next book, whatever. You might have to write 2 or 3 different books before you start realizing what you are doing the same each time. Okay, so what do I do the same each time? I think about the story before I go to bed at night. I tell myself a story to go to sleep. And then I wake up in the morning and I try to decide, is this an idea I like? Is this useful? Or do I need to toss it on into the bin? Was it just something I needed to get to sleep or to get to a headache? You never know. Okay, how much do I like this idea? Alright, and then often I'll go talk to my best friend. We're on Discord, we talk every day. So I'll write out to my best friend what the idea is. You know, from being inspired. Like, I just rewatched Lost in Space recently, and it really upset me that I don't like it. You know, but I really want a Lost in Space story. So how would I write Lost in Space type of thing? And that means, you know, changing characters and adding a bunch of stuff and going, what if so-and-so actually went to the science fair type of thing. So, you know, I talk out the idea, the scene idea, this whole plot idea with her. Okay, and this helps me form some notes. Now, if Discord was better, I could just copy and paste that Discord, which I've done, you know, copy and pasted out of other chat programs into a document. But a lot of times you get what she says, and you get timestamps, and you gotta go and fix it all. So from there, sometimes there will be problems that I was trying to work out with her that I work out while I'm talking at her. So from there, I can open up a Word document, whether it's a new Word document because it's a new idea, or if it's an Word document that's got my outline synopsis, if it's a scene, then I go and I write the scene. I synopsis, do a summary of the scene to my outline synopsis. And from there, once I feel I have enough for a plot that has some sort of beginning, middle, and end to it, you know, I have a conflict, very important, from there I can go and I can start working on the first draft. And I will come up with ideas for scenes while working on the first draft. If we're working on drafts, that's fine. You know, maybe I'll start coming up with through lines for other books. You know, I can't write a single book. I had an idea for a vampire rom-com, and I'm looking at it going, I have 6 enemies here. I have 6 antagonists. That is too much for one book. This is going to have to be 3 books, and I really wanted it to be 1 book. That would have been so much better than 3 books, but, you know, oh well. Here we go again. But, like, so you'll come up with stuff, and then I'll stop and go, I need to know X, Y, and Z. How does this work? So I might have to go to Google, or I might have to, you know, go onto Tumblr and search for specific things on Tumblr, or go to Etsy. If you want patterns from the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, sometimes even the 40s, go to Etsy. You'll find them, and then you can just take the front pictures. It's great. Let me tell you, it is great for research. And of course the Met does have some stuff too, but it's a little harder to navigate. I find Etsy to be a lot easier to navigate when I'm looking for, you know, whatever decade-inspired fashion. Or for the vampire rom-com, I had to go to I went to Tumblr and I was like, haute couture. I want haute couture dresses. Just give me all sorts of haute couture dresses. And I was like, oh, I like this particular designer. I'm going to go to Google and I'm going to Google them so I can see stuff off of Vogue.com. You know, but you know, so the process, you know, is like, but I might be doing different things at different stages in that process, but that's how the process usually works. It starts with me, like, I get some sort of idea, I'm inspired by a meme or, you know, like Lost in Space movie, or something I've been writing in a fan fiction, and I'm like, oh, has way too much original stuff to it. I need to move it into an original document. You know, it no longer resembles a fan fiction. You know, if I changed the name, people probably wouldn't know. And then I tell it to myself. And then I talk about it with Becca. And then I put it into a document, you know, a synopsis document, to figure out, is there actually a plot? Do I have enough conflict to write a book? And then, you know, I'll open up the manuscript so I can get it out of my head. New document so I can get it out of my head. And while I'm doing this, I might be doing research. I might be making a lore book. I might be, you know, downloading 101 pictures from the internet so I don't have to go, because sometimes you lose things. Sometimes things just poof from the internet and you're like, oh my god, I needed that. Why didn't I save that? Well, I wasn't planning on doing this back then, but I'm glad I have a decent description in the document. But man, I wish I had a picture. You know, like, and you know, I'm writing out through lines, or you know, I'm making a list of characters. I'm drawing a map. You know, that's the process that works for me. But your process might be completely different. You know, your process, you might be having to come up with this 3-structure act for your story, or maybe you need to outline it chapter by chapter so you know where the plot hooks are. Maybe you don't do any of that. Maybe you're working off the seat of your pants and you're just writing. Perfectly valid. My opinion about writing guidelines is they aren't rules. And there are going to be certain aspects of writing that are accepted, like that will get you a step closer to a traditional publishing contract. Okay, generally using third-person past, or at least using past tense. Present tense is still kind of iffy. you know, you have to, in order to know what is considered standard more in traditional publishing than, you know, indie publishing or fan fiction, is yes, you have to read. And you're going to go, well, for every single guideline or piece of advice I see, there's some big name traditional author violating it. Like prologues. You're going to be told, don't use a prologue. And you're going to be like, well, this traditional author and this traditional author and this traditional author uses a prologue. First off, ask yourself, did you actually read the prologue? Did it have actually anything to do with the rest of the story? Because 99% of the time, I'm going to tell you it doesn't. And it doesn't matter. So don't read it. But, so, when I'm giving writing advice about prologues, I'm going, okay, here are all the bunch of types of prologues I've seen, and here's why they don't work. If you want your prologues to work, this is why, these are the things you have to do to make them work. Make them relevant. Make the character show up later. You know, don't give away your ending. If we're supposed to be learning something with the character, then don't give away the ending in the prologue. That just means I don't want to read your book. You know, that's why my process advice is usually, here's what works story-wise. Focus on your story. Focus on how writing the story works for you. Find the pieces of, you know, maybe you have problems with filter words. Maybe you don't know what filter words are. You know, so look up advice about filter words. You might get a whole bunch of contradictory advice. Choose the one that, you know, improves your craft, or makes sense to you. You're gonna get advice about adverbs. Well, you can't always get rid of every single adverb. You're gonna get advice about ums and so's and does and wells and, you know, all these kind of extra words that you might put in, or fuzzy words like something or somewhere, and how, or, you know, making your description really concrete. But, like, maybe you don't need that advice yet. Maybe you just need advice on how to, you know, get from point A to point B in your plot. You know, so maybe sometimes filter words and stuff, that can be fixed later. Everything can be fixed in editing, and especially for the first draft. The process of the first draft is getting the story you want to tell out on the page. And then you edit. And you send it to, if you have people you trust to be beta readers. Look, I've been doing this for 20 years, so, like, I've had a lot of experience reading my own work and going, oh, this is working and this is not working, I gotta fix this, you know. And I have Becca, who has a master's degree, and I really trust because we have similar reading styles and, you know, reading tastes. So, you know, I can send it to her and she can be like, yes and no. And, you know, and she has somebody she sends her work to that she trusts to be like, if this person gets it, then everybody else will get it, type of thing. You know, finding that person or group of people you trust to send your work to be like, does this make sense? And, you know, you have to be clear with them where you are in that process too. Is this a first draft? Is this a second draft? Is this a third draft? You know, and be open to, when you're asking for criticism, you really have to be open to receiving it. If you're, like, really stubborn and you're like, they're telling you your structure and pacing's all off, and you're like, that's not where it is. You still need to be able to sit there and say, oh, the structure and pacing is off. You know, for these readers, they don't like it. Are these my actual readers, or do I need to readjust what I'm writing to fit the reader without losing the actual story? You know. I don't begrudge authors who put out writing advice books and make master classes and stuff for money. I don't. I know how hard it is. You don't make money in traditional publishing. You don't often make money in indie publishing either. And any way that they can make money by doing master classes at conferences, or doing a video master class, or writing a book about writing, you know, I'm not going to begrudge them because they need the income. That's the unfortunate truth of it. However, I will begrudge the impression that a lot of early authors get that these are hard rules. And, you know, they aren't. So if you are going indie and you want to be experimental in your work, go at it. If you want to be traditionally published, you need to read traditionally published books from within the last 5 years in your genre. And understand that those are the standards that you're being held to. And that, you know, as a young debut, or not so young debut author, there are things that you cannot get away with that older traditional authors can. Because that's part of the process, really. It's learning, you know, who your audience is and how to write for that audience, and, you know, the way that getting the words out works for you, and, you know, what you can and cannot do as a debut traditional author. Like, maybe if I had had something very, very genre specific in the box that I could have submitted, I could have gotten an agent and then later submitted my werewolf urban fantasy to them and possibly gotten it traditionally published. But it's not, you know, very genre boxy, so, you know, it didn't happen. Well, you know, they're not hard guidelines. They're not rigid columns. There are going to be things that you are going to have to learn to do, because especially if you want a traditional published contract, that some of those guidelines might be useful for. But in general, some of that advice just might not apply to you. It might not work, and it might make you feel, you know, inadequate or frustrated or anxious that you're not doing things right. When you as a creative person do not have the same mindset, you don't have the same creative juices or whatever that Stephen King does. You are not Stephen King. You are yourself. Embrace yourself. Find your own way. Find your own voice. I mean, I am not Jim Butcher, I'm not Patty Briggs, I'm not Anne Bishop, I am not, who else is in the urban fantasy sphere? I'm not Shannon McGuire. I am myself. I am just Ginny. And Ginny has I have my own things to say. I have my own ideas to put out there. I don't want to be, you know, restricted by what Jim Butcher is doing. I don't want to be restricted by what Patty Briggs is doing, because I don't want to write in first person, for God's sakes. And, you know, you should not be restricted to how, you know, the process of other writers. Like, Jim Butcher has plotted out 30 books. I know I have ideas for at least 20 for these, but I have not plotted them all out, you know, because I don't have an all huge overarching plot like that, you know, it's not a save the world type of thing, but, like, I shouldn't feel like I have to have an outline for 30 books to you know, to publish, or, you know, to write my books, okay? So, remember, you are you. Embrace you. There are guidelines, not rules. And, you know, honestly, if you can find this book, like on AB Books or something, because it's no longer in print, unfortunately, I highly recommend it. I mean, it's just got little pieces of advice, so, and lots of it, and it does strongly encourage, you know, you to be an individual. what do you need, you know, if you need, I think there's one that says that if you need like the dogs, the orchestra, and the cabin in the woods, then you need the dogs and orchestra and cabin in the woods type of thing. So take care of yourselves, my lovelies. Bless, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video.